So I think we are right on time and we should begin. Welcome, everybody. We are here today to have a conversation with some of the exceptional alumni of Jindal Global Business School. The theme for our interaction, for our conversation today is the dual degree programs that these speakers, these alumni pursued after completing various degree programs at Jindal Global Business School. So we're really here today to learn from their experiences, to see how it shaped their visions about their careers. And for the students who are attending, this is also an opportunity to ask questions and learn from their experiences firsthand. So let me start by introducing today's speakers. First of all, we have Ruchika Sharma, who went on to pursue her MSc in Management from Singapore Management University after studying at JGBS. We also have Palak Katyal, who did her Master's in Science and Marketing from the University of Texas at Dallas after completing the integrated BBA MBA from JGBS. And finally, we have Shresh Gupta, who pursued his MSc in International Business at Nottingham Trent University in the UK, also after doing the IBM at JGBS. Unfortunately, our fourth speaker, who was supposed to be Nishant Yadav, who went to Queen Mary University of London after his MBA at JGBS, isn't able to join us today, being unwell. So we wish Nishant a speedy recovery and also thank Ruchika, Palak, and Shresh for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here today. All right, that's quite enough from me. I want you guys to really first start by telling us, when did you decide that this dual degree opportunity, this dual degree pathway was something that you were going to pursue? And back then, what was your thought and what was your intention behind doing this? Let me say who can go first. I guess we can start with you, Shresh, please.
Okay, so I joined JGBS because of this. We have a 4+1 program course. So I decided in early, when I was in 2015 batch, I was joining JGBS. I thought to join this because of this MSc program. We have an international collaboration with so many universities. And thus I joined this. I wish to go for MSc for my personality development, for building networking, and to fulfill my dreams basically. And after, when I was in third year and fourth year, when I saw my seniors like Palak and Ruchika, one of my seniors. So when I saw them, like they are going there and they are learning many things, they are gaining many things from that experience. And then I decided to go for that. And in my fourth year, when we had many options, so I chose one of them and I went there.
Okay, great. What was the from the start of the first year, when you kind of knew you had joined JGBS precisely because this opportunity was there, to by the time you came closer to actually being able to go and do the dual degree, was there an evolution in your intention behind doing this? Did your reasons change, or was it a commitment that you made at the beginning that you just wanted to see through?
Because basically this IBM program started in 2013 only. So at that time when I was joining, we don't have any alumni who have joined these programs. So we don't know like how will be these programs will, how will the partnership universities will be. And after that, when in 2018 and 2017, 17, our seniors went there. When we gain knowledge from them that universities are these, they are providing these things, and we are gaining such a lot. Then I also finalized to move on and gain some more experience.
Okay, great. Pallab, what was your thought behind doing the
So
JDBS?
I actually had a very similar experience as Shresh has just mentioned. My intention to join JGBS was the fact that they had the opportunity to go abroad and study. And my target was from the beginning to go to the US. So I actually feel really privileged to actually have fulfilled that. My actually initially when I heard of JGBS, obviously the business school had just started off. It was 1 year in, and there was no previous alumni or any of our seniors who had already experienced this. So because of that, even though the end goal was to get to the US, the process of that and through the years, a lot of things kept changing. And whether it was the application process, whether it was understanding how to get to the application process, whether it was to understand which college to shortlist and what course we should do, all of those things obviously as we learned more and more about it, as we got more involved in the process, we kind of understood it. But that was definitely what I wanted to do. And that's the reason I joined JGBS in the first place.
Sounds good. And lastly, Ruchika.
Hello, Prof. Kalyani. First of all, thank you for having us here. And my reasons are mostly the same. So it was one of the unique selling propositions that JGBS offered back in 2014 when we had just come to visit the campus, and the admissions team would tell us about this fifth year, opportunity, which made it stand apart from all other options that we had because they were mostly 3-year or 4-year undergrad programs. And it made us choose JGBS, which was such a new business school at that moment, to come here and join this. And I remember at that moment, there was just 5 universities that we had this opportunity of going for this fifth year to. Yeah. But over the years, in those 4 years, there were so many new partnerships, and which also made me change my decision. So for example, Singapore was not one of the any university in Singapore was not partnered with JGBS back in 2014. So my first intention was also to go to the US, but over time, then I had to evaluate with new universities and new countries coming into picture of why I should go and where I should be going. And also my reasons for going to the MS changed. First, it was just to study. Then over time, I think it changed to career prospects or, getting a job in that country. So yeah, those were my reasons over the time, how it developed.
Great. So let's now go to the next part of the process, which is that you've applied, you've gone through the internal process, and you've been nominated to the partner institution. What happens after that? And in your individual experiences, what would you like to highlight in terms of after the nomination? What was the post-institution application process like? What would you advise in terms of visa and housing and the preparation that goes into the relocation aspect of going and pursuing the dual degree? And why don't we start with Pallab first on that?
Sure. So the initial process was at JGBS itself, where we were initially shortlisted based on our grades, based on our extracurriculars, and a couple of other categories that they kind of picked out on. And based on that, they had an internal process to first review our entire performance through the 4 years. And then they did our personal interviews as well, which kind of, they actually asked us why we want to go outside and what is the reason we want to go, what is the reason we're picking a specific country or a specific course, and what is it that we want to achieve in the long run, and why we want to actually end up choosing this particular journey. So that was initially the process. And post that, I think the application process, especially for the US, in my case, I would tell you, we had a very strong affiliation with the university. So as far as the application process, which may or may not be similar for other universities, everything was handled primarily by JGBS. So I wasn't individually involved so much in the application process. Once my internal process was completed with JGBS, the only thing I was waiting on was to receive a confirmation from the partner university. So it made my transition very, very smooth compared to obviously my peers and even my peers in the University of Texas over there. So, and one advantage, or I consider this an advantage, is that I didn't have to give a GMAT or a GRE because of the affiliation. So obviously almost all colleges, whether it's a master's or an MBA, you require a GMAT or GRE to go to the US to study. But in this case, because I went through an affiliation, I did not have to do that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was just about to ask you because a lot of JGBS students ask this question.
Yeah.
You talked about the GRE, GMAT. Did you have to take any English language test?
No, for US, you do not require it.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, Palak, sorry, Ruchika, what was your experience like?
So for SMU, it was very different from UT Dallas because we had to do the application ourselves. Of course, the JGBS office helps us out when we are in the process of applying, but it's essentially a standalone application just like any other student. And you have to give the GMAT, or there's an SMU admissions test, which is also an option to give. Just there's some differences, of course. GMAT is more universally acceptable, and you can get scholarships if you have a high GMAT score. But SMU admission test wouldn't offer you that. But we don't need to give it, and I don't think we need a very high score just for acceptance. It's the overall application which SMU looks at, and there's an interview process after your application. But of course, JGBS helps us in the entire, the guiding process along the line. But you need to have your own application. And after that, once we get an acceptance from the university, we don't have to be involved in any visa processes. So in Singapore, it's very straightforward. The university that accepts you applies for you, and you just get an email with a letter which you have to take once you leave for Singapore. And once you come here, you get that visa. So it's basically a visa and approval, like a letter. So your process is just to apply and get the acceptance. That's the journey after JGBS lets you apply.
That's interesting. Can you say a bit more about what that visa is called and what does it allow you to do and not? What are the kind of restrictions of that particular visa category?
So it's called a student pass, and it's valid for 1 month after your course gets over here. So if my course was like 1 year long, then it'll be 1 year, 1 month, that long. And on that visa, you're allowed to work part-time, which is 16 hours a week, which is actually good enough for students, because Singapore is a very expensive city. So it allows you to work part-time, and you can for 16 hours. Also, my course had an internship component, which was another reason why I chose this course in the first place, because we could intern full-time as a part of our course structure. So then you don't have the 16-hour limit, but the 16-hour limit helps along with your studies, you can work. So it's called student pass. Yeah.
Shresh, I remember the UK visa system has gone through a bit of back and forth in the last few years. So what was your experience like?
So I applied in 2019. As I graduated in 2020 only. So our visa was called Tier 4 visa, and in that, like Ruchika mentioned, in Singapore you have 1 year plus 1 month, and in UK we had 1 year plus 4 months. But now, as India and UK have a different bonding, so UK is providing all the students Tier 4 visa, that after your course completion you can get work visa for 2 years. So in that 2 years, you can find a job, you can do part-time or anything you want to. And apart from that, when we had a Tier 4 visa, if we are a Tier 4 holder, while we are studying, so we can work around 40 hours a week. So their pay scale is also good, their minimum wage is also good, so we can easily manage our expenses while doing part-times or while doing internships. We can easily do that. And after that, when we are into a summer vacations or when we are into a winter vacation or Eastern break, so that time we can ask the university, like my university was Nottingham Trent University. So we can ask the university to issue a letter that our university is not running right now. And then after that, we can work around 60 hours a week. So that's where we got some benefits in UK, so that we can be cost effective, because UK is like much expensive because of the currency rate. It's now touching around 99 or 100 rupees per pound. So that's why we had to manage our funds on our own mostly.
Yeah. What were the requirements that Nottingham Trent have? Were there any specific requirements, and what about housing, etc.? How did you get that all sorted?
Okay, so our Nottingham Trent University requirements was the what was the collaboration between Jindal and Nottingham, the CGPA criteria. And after that, they need IELTS, which is an English proficiency test. And you can skip that if you score. UK government has a rule: if you score in high school, if you have scored, in +2, if you have scored more than 85%, so you can skip that too. So I didn't need to do for IELTS. I just need to qualify for the bond, which and what the MOU, what Nottingham Trent University and Jindal Global University had. And after that, the housing thing and everything there is private. There's nothing government owned or university. University has only one building for providing accommodations, and so that. But that also is like a private accommodation only. It's apart from university. So in basically in UK, there's not like universities are not like proper campus type. They are like segregated into campus are different. Your play school, your sports department is different. Your labs are different, and your working space, your cafeteria, all are different space. They are not like a Jindal University is like we enter into a space, then we have everything. So that's basically have different entrance to different places.
Okay, fantastic. Before we go on to my next question, I just want to say to the attendees that you're welcome to drop your questions either using Q&A or using chat. I can see that one of the participants has already dropped a question, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that later. So yeah, look forward to seeing your questions coming in. Now, in terms of the program itself, what would you say was the one thing that pleasantly surprised you about SMU, UTD, and NTU? And what was the one thing that maybe you weren't so much prepared for, which you would like to share with us today for the benefit of future candidates? So, Ruchika, we'll start with you.
Okay. So one thing that I really liked about coming here was the level of opportunities. I would say it's because the class structure, you get students from all over the world, and then because I think it's also because SMU is one of the top 3 universities in Singapore. So all the opportunities that you get in terms of case study competitions, presentations, and also really established faculty. Of course, JGU would also get those kind of faculty, but here it's like an everyday thing. So that's one thing I really enjoyed. And I also participated in these levels of competitions and representing SMU in them. So that's one thing I really liked about coming here. We also have like a business study mission program, which is you go to another country in Southeast Asia and you do a case study project over there. So these are the things which I really liked and which you have to do outside of India. You know, within India, it doesn't have that impact. And one thing which I wasn't prepared for, I think JGU kind of spoils you because once you're in, you're taken care of. I remember I used to complain about the hostel, about the food, but once you come out, it's like, you know, it's like life. You have to figure out your accommodation, you have to figure out your food, your day, you know, the day. So there's nobody here to take care of you. You have to manage yourself. So that's one thing I learned and I appreciate, but it was challenging at first. Yeah.
Shreesh, tell us about what surprised you about NTU.
So in our course also we got to choose that we can have a different degree in different university in different country. So my course was 12 months and that course was 15 months. After we went there, we can choose that for going to an abroad program, and we can get 2 degrees in like 15 months. So that also we got an option, and that was very good. But it was like if we chose, we are into another 3 months we are getting into it. And so the main part I really liked, I really found that change, that Nottingham Trent University provides like only around 6 hours or 8 hours in a week. They like teach us only 8 hours in a week and hardly 2 days or 3 days in a week. So and in that 8 hours or 10 hours, they especially focus on 1 or 2 subjects, and they finish them up, and then they had assignments and finish that subject, and we gained that credit, and after that we moved on into a next subject. So that was the one of the main thing I liked about it. And mostly as Ruchika mentioned, that the life outside India is really different because we have to manage all the things on our own, our funds, our living expense, our food, our accommodation, our travel, everything we have to manage on our own. And in India, if we can go anywhere, our parents are like, okay, मैं ये पहुंचवा देता हूँ तेरे पास. So in India, it's like pretty simple, and there we don't have any contact, we don't have any sources, so we have to do it on our own. So that was the main thing I went there because that helps me in developing my personality. That helps me interacting with other people. That helped me like to being an extrovert mostly.
Yeah, it's all about discovering yourself and realizing what your own strengths are, right, at the end of the day. And yes, Palak.
All right. So before I get started on this question, when we finished the previous question, I kind of realized I skipped the part about the visa situation in the US, which is something that I do want to mention here. So with any master's degree, there's two types of visas that you get, depending on which degree you have selected, whether it's a STEM degree or a non-STEM degree. Now, on your passport, your visa will still stay 5 years. You will get it. So if I've got it in 2018, which is when I got mine, my visa is valid till 2023. But because of the nature of my course, because it was a non-STEM degree, my actual validity is during the duration of my course and 1 year of WorkX, which I am permitted to do, depending on if I get the opportunity to work over there. And in case of a STEM degree, it's 2 years of your course and then a 3-year work permit as a student that you get. Now this visa is called the F1 visa. And now the basic fundamental difference between the two is obviously the time duration. But even though it sounds like a very small factor, it creates a huge impact on how the companies over there want to take you in or not. Because obviously no company wants to invest in someone who's going to, at the end of the day, abandon them after a year. So they want someone who has like who they can give that time and space for understanding how well the person is fit in that company. And also at the same time, the student also gets to kind of experience if this is what they want to do. And even though 1 year is a long enough time, with the way the United States functions is mostly they actually want someone for a longer duration, and then they want to decide whether they want to invest in them and actually sign up for their work visas, which is then going to be the H-1B visa, which is the work visa. So now how this works is basically after your graduation, you're given a grace period of about 90 days. And in those 90 days, you have to either start a job or start some part-time. You can work in NGOs, you can do a part-time job, you can do a full-time job, however you want to do it, but you have to have a job at the end of the day, which after those 90 days. And towards the end of the duration, suppose your 1 year of work access is expiring in Feb, post that you also get 60 days of grace period where you can find another job which is willing to sponsor you in case you want to stay on further, in case the job you're already working on does not work out for you. So this is just a brief of the process. Obviously, I don't want to get too much into the details right now. And this is one of my learnings that I had, which I believe I missed out on before I went to the US. And that's so you can do a marketing degree in a STEM degree as well. So there are ways to tackle situations like that. But obviously, I'm not going to get into too much detail about that right now. So now getting to the question about the living situation over there, I think Ruchika and Shresth have covered that up really well. I'm going to first talk about the thing that I wasn't prepared for. Well, actually, I was prepared for it, but I didn't know it was going to be this hard. Is staying so far away from family. US is not a hop, skip, and jump away that you can just come back home every 2-3 months. So I used to not get an opportunity to come back. Even during COVID, 1 full year, I was in the US, where I see all family members, everyone's getting together and all, and I'm just by myself over there. So that's a little scary, but you get used to it. And you actually get this real thing of independence, and just you get really you get the freedom, and the independence is really, really good because you learn so much from it, whether it's managing your house expenses, whether it's kind of tackling these small details of cooking and laundry and just, grocery shopping, all these things which we, at least the way we have been brought up, have not really been exposed to in over here. So that's one thing that I actually am really blessed to get that exposure and get that experience to do all these things by myself, because I know that whether it was staying at home or staying in Jindal, we were definitely spoiled. And these kind of things we didn't have to worry about at that time. So the fact that I got the opportunity to go over there and experience all those things was something which was really nice. And one thing that I really liked about the course over there, I think along with the theoretical exposure that they give, every single course, every single subject I took during the duration of my course, I actually got to do real-time projects. So we have people from different corporate setups coming to our university, and they're actually attending our, they're getting involved in our lectures and kind of in the course curriculum. And at the end of the semester, for every single subject, we do a real-time project. So whatever tool we're learning, whatever program we're learning, whatever information we're grasping onto, we, at the end of the semester, we're doing a real-time project on it, which actually makes us understand the tool more in depth, because until you actually use it, you're not really getting exposed to it. And that's one thing that I believe JGBS is now stepping into, but they still do miss a lot of factors in that case. So whether it was like a basic marketing agency that was coming, whether it was Texas Instruments, is like one of the biggest companies in Texas. So we have corporate people coming from their marketing department to our classes, actually attending classes with us. Then they kind of brief us on, this is the project for you. And at the end of the semester, some of them are group projects, some of them are individual projects. So that actually gives you a great learning into what actually is working in the industry these days, and how whatever you're learning theoretically is applied practically. So that's something that is definitely really, really good.
Okay, so I've just noticed that a lot of the questions coming from the attendees are really about how to decide where to go, right? How do you pick the right institution? And when you do, how much of choice do you have in terms of which program you attend? Okay, so since we're on that subject anyway, I'll take those questions now. Now, one question is, how exactly does one pick the right university or course? Where are the aspects? What are the aspects we are supposed to look for realistically? Then related to that is SMU worth going for on an exchange program? Do we have the option to choose our own program at SMU, our own degree program when we decide to go to SMU? And I would ask the other two to also answer this question. Were you assigned a program, or did you have a choice? What were the choices? And then, should we choose a country on the basis of where we further want to work or settle down? I might have something to say about that. Okay, this is done. This is done. What are the okay, no, this is a question for the for your study abroad office. What are the universities available in US for JGBS? Yeah, and also, would you should we sit for JGBS placements or go for a dual degree program? It says a foreign exchange program, but I guess they mean a dual degree program. So do highlight whatever you can. And I guess what I would ask you to do is just now also say, if you are looking for dash, you should go to NTU. If you are looking for dash, you should go to UTD. And if you're looking for dash, you should go to SMU, right? So all of you try to say that and also answer the specific questions that were asked about program options and the other kind of related questions that I've just put to you. And we'll start with Shresh, I guess.
Okay, so UK, as you all know, like UK it's hard to find a job there. But if you want to go to your family, back to your family business, or you want to go, you have a different aim other than a job, then it's better to go on in UK, because in UK you can find each and every culture. And in UK you can also, there's many Indians, there are many Europeans, many Chinese, many Americans, they are everyone in UK. So you can learn about every culture, you can learn about every how to behave with them, how to interact with them, because universities always provide, they always are into cross cultural programs basically. So they never put Indian with Indian, they never put Chinese with Chinese, they always put cross cultures so that they can easily communicate easily. So that's the better thing I liked about UK. And in UK I went there just because of my personality development, to gain some experience. Basically I have a pharma business, and mostly of the marketers in world, more than 25% are in UK. So my aim for going to UK was different, rather than finding a job or finding something else. So that's the reason I went for UK, and that's the reason I found many companies there. I was able to get out some time and went to different cities, different countries, because in UK we have 4 countries, so we can easily travel with the same tier 4 visa. So I was able to do what I wanted to. It's a free country basically. You can travel anywhere, you can go anywhere. You don't have any restrictions. So to answer Dr. Kalyani's question, if you are looking for your personal development, like personal development is basically, if you go out, you will gain something or the other. But if you are looking specifically, not specifically for the jobs, because in Jindal in India, we usually have like companies are coming into college for interviewing ourselves, for interviewing candidates. But in UK, it's different. Universities will provide you the way, the path. They'll show you the path to how to apply to the job, and they'll guide you. But all the things you have to do it on your own. You can't like just say that in Nottingham employability team, that please, I want to work for this company, please provide me if I can get interview. You have to go on their website, you have to apply. There are 3 or 4 stages you need to complete that. The university can only guide you, they can't like ask the company to come and interview a candidate on a university premises. So that's why it always says that jobs are hardly, like, it's more difficult than other countries in UK.
Given that, just thank you, that was very helpful and comprehensive. Given that there are a couple of options available even within the UK, what would you say is unique about Nottingham Trent?
So we had many collaboration in UK only. So I chose Nottingham because London is like 1.5 times expensive from other cities in UK. And like if you talk about Queen's Mary, or if you talk about King's College, anything. So they are solely in London, and London is 1.5 times expensive. If I'm getting the same burger in Nottingham of like £4, and then that same burger, the same brand, I am getting there at £7. So it's like too much expensive in London. So that's the like main reason I didn't choose London. I chose Nottingham Trent, and the university have the business school of Nottingham Business School is amongst the top 100 world business schools, and especially my course was there, and I had an option to travel. We had an option of like a 11-day trip to Spain, I think Spain or Portugal. Sorry, we had an 11-day trip to Portugal to had a conversation with corporates. So we were used to have group of 4 cross cultural. We had groups, and we need to go out to Portugal and to interact with other businesses and help them and consult them basically. But due to this corona, this trip was planned in April, and due to this corona, the trip was cancelled, so we didn't able to go there. But from this year, I think the people will go, because now COVID is almost gone.
Yeah, and lastly, how many options in terms of degree programs could you choose from, or did you have just one option?
Well, for options, I had many options. Like I chose MSc in International Business. We had a list of courses what Nottingham offer, and we can choose any. There's no restriction that if I if I wanted to get this, and if the university is offering, we can easily choose the course. There's no restriction from JG or there's no restriction from Nottingham to if we don't if we can't choose anything, any course.
Sounds good. Let me go to Palak next.
I want to start with saying that one good thing about doing a master's degree versus doing an MBA is so for a master's degree, you don't need to have prior experience in the same field that you're pursuing your master's in. So that's definitely a huge plus point. I know, I mean, almost all my friends from the US, they had all done engineering before and they were all doing business degrees in their master's degrees now. So it doesn't have to be correlated in any way. From my understanding, at least at the time that we were applying, JGU had two kind of affiliations. One was with specific courses in the affiliation university, and one was with the university itself. So if it's in the case where it's with the university itself, you can choose any degree you want to do. It doesn't have to be specific to one specific stream or anything. As long as you're doing an MS or a master's degree, you can choose which stream you want to do it. You can do supply chain, you can do analytics, uh, you can do marketing, you can do business management, you can do like finance, you can do energy management. There's like a lot of options. Like UTD has way too many degrees for me to mention all of them over here. So you can definitely choose either. I mean, there's no restriction in that case. And there's one question that is coming up over here about part-time jobs that I don't want to mention. In the US, during your course, when you are pursuing your degree, at that time, you are allowed this thing called a CPT, which is curricular practical training, which is the same thing as I think Singapore offers as an internship program. So during the duration of your course, you're allowed to do an internship as a part of your course. So it will be counted as one of the subjects and you will be receiving credits for it. Now there's, so in UTD specifically, there's two ways you can do it. One is you take your, so it is for 3 credits, which is very similar to the credit system in JGBS as well. So those 3 credits you'll be getting. So there's 2 ways you can do it. One of them is you take all 3 credits in one semester, you finish off your internship in that semester, or you can pace it out and continue your internship. So you do it in the fall semester, you do it in the spring semester, you do it in the summer semester, and you take one credit each for each of those semesters. So that way you can space it out in the sense that you can work in the same company, you can continue internship in the same company, or you can do internships in different companies. That way you get a vast variety of exposure. So in total, there's about 4 semesters, during which there's also a summer in the middle. So you can actually space it out very, very well. And you kind of understand what kind of company you want to work for. That way the companies also get to know you. That way you can apply for a full-time based on your internships as well. And the second thing is the work duration, the part-time work that you do during your course, which you're allowed 20 hours as part-time, but they have a lot of restrictions. You are only allowed to work on campus. You cannot work anywhere off campus. That is not considered legal by the nature of your visa status. So there is way too many jobs that you can do on campus. You can work in the cafeteria. There's all sorts of fast food places that you can work in. I personally worked at Chick-fil-A myself. And so one of my semesters I worked at Chick-fil-A, and my other semester I worked in the University Recreation Center, which is basically like the sports center in the university. So all the indoor sports, all the indoor activities, whether it's gym, whether it's dance, whether it's kickboxing, all those activities that they have indoors. So it's just basically management of the indoor activities. And honestly, my personal experience with this is it really teaches you basic life skills, working like things like this, and you actually start to value the other side of the counter. Like I know there's a huge thing in India about not working in that sector, but I was really excited to do that, especially working. I was basically a cashier at Chick-fil-A, and it gave me a really, really good understanding of customer service, and it really builds your communication skills, your customer service skills, and in the long term, they definitely do help a lot. So I would definitely advise anyone to pursue a part-time job. One more thing I want to mention is there is a lot of competition because all international students who are coming want to work part-time for obvious reasons. You're able to manage your basic expenses, and it's just easier to get through like the small things. And whether it's your small travel requirements within, I mean, in US, it's like really easy to travel around, even though you have to take flights and all, and there's not so much of road traffic over there. But I mean, traveling is something that you can definitely cover when you're working part-time, and it really helps because for small things like this, you don't have to ask your parents for money during your course. And it also gives you a lot of basic personal development skills as well at the same time. So I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Those were all very important points you mentioned, Palak. And yes, Ruchika, do also address the SMU specific questions that
I'm kind of
that I-
lost now because of the so many points that Palak and Shrestha mentioned, but I'll try to channel my thoughts. So firstly, I would like to talk about the reasons for choosing a university. There could be two mainly. One is to find a job and to settle down wherever you're going. And the other is just to get the experience when you know you want to come back to India and find a job or work with your family business. For me, it was the first that I wanted to go to a country or to a university which would help me to find a job in that place itself, which was one of the reasons I chose Singapore. Because I wouldn't say it's easy to find a job here, but because of the image or the impression that we already have of the UK and the US, Singapore seemed to be more friendly and more welcoming. Also, if you get a job here, since it's so close to India, you feel like you're closer to family. So as Palak mentioned, for her it was difficult to travel. And back in 2019, I think I traveled 3 or 4 times back to India. But of course, after COVID, we couldn't do that because of all the restrictions. But to settle down and to be closer to home, Singapore seems to be a good option. And I still stand with that one. So that was the reason I had chosen Singapore. Then the course. So in SMU, you can decide whichever course you want to do. So the course in itself is structured, but you can apply to whichever course the business school offers. So when I had come, 4 of us had come from Jindal in that year, and 3 of us did the management program, and there was one student who did an analytics master's. So it was up to us, whichever course we wanted to apply to. And both the courses had the option of internships. So we had to do a 5 to 6 month long internship, which was credit bearing and full time. So it's basically like you're working full time in the office, because there's a lot of difference which I felt between corporate life in India and in Singapore. Even as interns, I felt like I had more responsibility and I was given more work. There was more value of the work I gave to the company compared to as an intern in India. I don't have full-time experience from India, but I could compare from my 3 to 4 internships I did during my JGBS student life. So that's another point which I considered when I joined SMU or chose this course, was the internship component. Then in terms of the visa, I've already mentioned, it's called a student pass. So it's not a visa on your passport. It's basically like an identity card which you have in Singapore, which is valid for your course timeline, 1 month over that. Then after that, you get a 3-month grace period once your student pass expires, which is basically for you to look for jobs or to go back home, whichever. And in that 3-month period, you can't be working. Another option is to get a 1-year visa on top of your student pass. It's called a long-term visit pass, which is for you to stay here and look for jobs. Again, you're not allowed to work on it. So that way I found Singapore a little strict, because I would speak to, for example, Palak, and in the US, you can work on your student visa if the company offers you a role. But in Singapore, you cannot work until and unless you get a sponsored visa, which is called the employment pass. So that comes to my next point. Once you get a job, the company has to apply for your employment pass, which is usually for 2 years validity, and then it's a renewal process. So that's how it works in terms of next stage after your studies get over in SMU. What else did I want to talk about? So in terms of finding jobs, again, I think Shrestha has mentioned this already. It's not like it's back at JGBS, where either companies would come to the campus for interviews, or there would be companies that I remember going to interviews which were organized by JGBS. So nothing like that is offered. I think from the first week itself, SMU starts training us for LinkedIn management or impression management, interview skills. So we have a lot of these I would call it workshops, which are compulsory for students to attend. And we are taught the importance of networking and talking to people on LinkedIn or meeting up with coffees, which we found very odd because it's not like a trend in India. Like you meet people informally, people from your dream companies, and go and pitch yourselves to them. So that's one thing which we were taught in SMU, and I think it's important. And in Singapore itself, it's a small place, so it's good to talk or reach out to people informally on LinkedIn and or in career events. So I can share my experience. My first part-time internship was from an event I attended at SMU, and I spoke to the speaker in that panel. Informally, I was speaking, and she was originally from Punjab but shifted to Malaysia and has set up there and then came to Singapore. So we connected. I could talk about things, we related, and then she gave me her visiting card. And then I had to reach out to her, and I got my first part-time internship through this. So I could actually see that networking, giving me some results. So again, you're all by yourself once you're here, and but still I would say Singapore is very student friendly in terms of giving you opportunities as an intern. My internship experiences is what has helped me to get a job here eventually. So I would say if you're deciding a university based on settling down, then you should see if they have the opportunity to intern, or if the visa allows you to work part-time, even if you don't have to do a compulsory internship. Because once we come from JGU, we don't have any work experience, and that's what companies are looking for when they look for full-time placements or like giving you a job. So that is that would be my recommendation when you're deciding which university to join and how close you want to stay from home in case you do settle down over there. Yeah.
Okay, great. There is one question which I would ask you all to just quickly respond in like 10 seconds each. Were there any open scholarships that were available at your institution? And or did you get any tuition discount under the dual degree arrangement with JGU? So Ruchika first.
So there was no the second one, that there was no tuition fee deduction because of the partnership with JGU. But in your application, if you have, I think it was 680 GMAT score of higher than 680, then you get there's batches. It's on the SMU website of how much scholarship you'll be getting. And they also have a couple of more scholarships which are based on essays. So like, I think they have an Impact on Asia scholarship and a Women in Leadership scholarship. So you have to give a 500 word statement saying why you deserve that scholarship, and those are the 2 extra scholarships on top of the merit-based scholarship which SMU offers. Yeah.
Palak?
So we don't, like Ruchika has already mentioned, we're not really applicable for scholarships because of the affiliation. But what we are applicable for is applying for THships and RAs, which is like research assistant and teacher's assistants. And it is very, very popular in the US specifically. Now, the qualification for that is after your first semester, depending on your grades in the first semester, one of your professors recommends you to the board, whichever degree you are doing. So if it's a marketing degree, you have a marketing board, you have a marketing director. So they recommend you to that board. And then there's obviously like a process that they go through, which they see your academics, they see a couple of other things, they see your participation and everything. And based on that, based on your CGPA and everything, you're kind of given that, and you get in the case of a TA-ship, I know more specifically than an RA-ship, so I'm going to talk about that. For a TA-ship, once you are approved as a TA, it's basically like a part-time job. It's very similar to a part-time job, and the working hours is similar. It's going to be 20 hours a week. And you are eligible to pay the in-state tuition fee at that case. So along with the stipend that you're receiving while you're doing your work, which is a very good amount, it's about $10,000 per month, which is very, very good considering you're just a student. And you're also paying that in-state tuition fees, which is 1/3 the price of what an international student has to pay. So you're saving on a lot of money in that case. And it's very varied depending on how your professor is, under who you're doing the assistantship. But it's not very, very taxing depending on how many subjects you get. Suppose that I've seen professors which have like 8 classes that they're handling, so it gets a little taxing for the students. but the professor is always very, very helpful in these cases. Like they'll be like, we understand you have your tough subjects as well that you need to focus on. So they're very supportive. They won't like pile on all the work on you that you have to just do all this. They'll kind of, work together in collaboration and be like, we'll do half kind of thing. So, I mean, the professors are extremely supportive over there, and definitely consider applying for a TA-ship. And just keep your grades up, because that definitely matters.
Yes, Shresh.
So in NTU, we got tuition fee discount also from Jindal University, as we get, I think, 10% tuition fee discount. And we, after that, after indulging into Nottingham Training University, there we had a NTU meet in Delhi, in Kolkata, in Mumbai. Wherever we are, we can easily go and we can have NTU meet. And we were around 25 members where we chit chatted. And there I came to know that we have special scholarships also, which we can apply through their website. So as Ruchika mentioned, that we also had a proper form in which we had, I think, 3 questions or 4 questions. Each we need to answer in 500 words or 1,000 words, that why we are eligible to the scholarship. And after that, I got that scholarship also, and I got university discount also. But when I went there, I needed to choose only one out of them. So either the university discount or either the scholarship I got. So definitely I chose which was the higher. So I only was able to get one scholarship.
I will just add to all of this. Thank you. That was all very helpful. I will just add all of this and say that if you look at the official website of the university you're planning to attend, if you do an extremely thorough research of that website, you will find all the information there, right? So just go to the official website. Don't even Google like scholarships at SMU. Don't do that. Go to SMU's official website, go to UTD's official website, and make sure you've not just seen the webpage of the school you're planning to attend, but also the graduate studies, the undergraduate studies, the financial aid office, the students affairs office, every goddamn page that you can possibly explore, you explore, because you don't know where that information is sitting, right? Like this is a very basic, like no-brainer step that I find it incredible that many students don't even realize they're supposed to do, but that's where it is. It's all there, right? And then after you've seen that, yes, make a list of the Google search terms that you want to look up, and then look those up, right? Then look at the student visas to the US page. That will give you, the official website of maybe the US Embassy or the US High Commission, or whatever it is. It will give you, or the UK, I mean the UK High Commission. It will give you kind of maybe a list of other websites or web pages or links where you can go for different types of financial aid, right? So your internet search has to be really, 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 really good, and you should approach people. When you approach people with queries, don't approach them with the basic query, ma'am, can you send me a list of the financial aid available, right? Or the scholarships that I can apply for. Do your research first. Have very specific queries. Have a list of questions. Am I eligible for this? When do I need to apply for this? If I'm stuff like that, right? So can I apply to this scholarship if I'm already receiving a tuition waiver? Very specific things like that. So that's up to you. Right? The fact that you're saving under the dual degree program, the fact that you're saving so much time and energy that otherwise would go into an open application process, means that you have so much extra time and energy left over to do this good research and inform yourself, right? So this is what I would say. Palak, are you trying to come in?
I just wanted to add something to that. I understand that when you're doing a Google research, you sit in front of Google and you're a little overwhelmed of what do I research? Like I want to go abroad. I know that. Where do I start my research? So narrow it down, do it step by step, and just first understand what you want to do. And based on that, like ma'am has already mentioned, everything is there on Google. The websites are so thorough. You can there's a search bar on the website, so if you're not sure which tab to search under, you can definitely search in the website itself. And they have every single thing penned down over there. There's nothing that they're missing with the information. And even if they are, they have a live chat box. Literally, you have service of like everything that they can have and they can share with you. And once you're thorough with your points, or once you know what you're looking for, if you go to anyone for guidance with specific pointers like this, and this is what I need help with, even the other person is able to guide you much better in that case. If you just be like, I want to go abroad, and you go to them, they're also going to be like, where do I start from? What all do I tell you? So definitely get your thoughts together, gather yourself, and then go and talk to someone about it.
Great. Okay, now I want to come to the final segment, which is how does the dual degree figure in career plans, right? Now, here we want to talk about two things. One is, what are the immediate work and employment prospects that open up or don't open up as a result of the dual degree, okay? And then how does one think of this in a more long-term, from a more long-run perspective, right? This dual degree is always going to be with you. What is it going to matter to you like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, in the run of like a 40-year career that's ahead of you? How is it going to count, right? And then related to that, I'll just read out a couple of questions, which are from the audience. Does NTU, UTD, and SMU provide campus placements? Where are you all currently working? Does dual degree program provide a path to a job in that country? A lot of us are applying to semester abroad programs. What value does it hold when applying for MS? I think that's a slightly different question. And then there was also an earlier question about should we choose the country on the basis of, you know, where we would like to settle down. And there was another very important question about, if it comes to a choice between going abroad in your final year and sitting for the JGBS placements, which one, how do you decide? Not which one would you do, but how do you decide that, on what basis? So that's kind of a cluster of questions which we will stick to now, overall under the rubric of what does this mean for careers, short-term, long-term. And we'll start with, I guess, Ruchika now.
So in terms of, I can only speak for myself here in terms of career. So I think I had started developing an interest in marketing since second year. And it's a very different, that's when I realized marketing is not just advertising and sales, which was my impression before that. So I used to think, okay, I'll just do some math, I'll do accounting, I'll do analytics, but not this creative side. But that's when I realized, I think we had some courses on business research methods and with Prof. KK Pandey, and he's the one who really inspired me into this field. And that's when I developed that interest of marketing plus analytics together. And that's how I decided my courses in JGU also after that. I think in third year and fourth year, we could take our own electives. And that's what I continued once I came to SMU. So initially they have a course, like they have some fixed courses which you have to do. There's 16 courses we do here in a year. 8 of them are compulsory, and then 8 are electives. So I chose all electives which would, you know, help me in developing my knowledge in that field. On top of that, I did 2 internships. One was a part-time internship and one was a full-time plus part-time, because of my course structure. So overall, I think out of my 18 months here, I interned for 16 months, and it was all in the field of my interest. So which actually added knowledge to, you know, what I wanted to do. So I would say career-wise, of course, the course helps, but also your, you know, how active you are in terms of, you know, getting the required experience for that. So that's how I penned out my career prospects with the JGBS courses and with the SMU courses that I took up, and the you know, the part-time and the full-time work experience along with that. So, and it was a combination of my numbers and marketing, which is what I wanted. that would be my answer to that question of how does going for an MS help you in your job prospects. Secondly, the reason I found Singapore worthwhile and working here was after I got my internship experiences. So I realized the difference between, you know, I think I've already mentioned this before, the value of work in India and or you know, just it's called dignity of labor. I think you're just working there full time. You're working at nights, weekends. So here I felt, you know, that your time is respected. When I work here, my manager will tell me, you know, okay, you worked long enough this week, you take some time off, and it's not like, you know, accounted leave. So it's, you know, they value the effort that you're putting into your work, and that's what I really appreciate. And that's kind of balance of work that we all, you know, deserve once we are putting in the work, because work is not life. Life is, you know, it's a part of your life. And also the exposure that you get. So I think Shresh mentioned UK gives you a lot of experience in terms of students coming from different nationalities. I'm sure US also has that. Singapore is a little different. Here, there's not a lot of people coming from the West, from the US or of Europe. Very few. I would say 90% of my class was Asians, and half of that was Indians. So, I mean, it's a good thing and a bad thing, but because, you know, get a lot of friends from India. But once you're into the work or once you're in an internship, you get a lot of experience, because the corporate structure here is very, very global. You get exposed to people from all places. So I have worked with people from, I think, all the countries which I would have, you know, I wish to go and work at. So for example, UK or Spain or US, or people from all those countries are working here. And because you talk to them, you know, you get insights into the work life or the culture in any case. So that's one thing which I really liked about working here. And I mean, I can again speak for myself. I think if you put the right efforts and if you have confidence in yourself, you can, you know, get a job. I wouldn't say it's easy to get a job in any of these countries, but and it's also a bit of, you know, timing. What do they want? Is the company willing to sponsor a work visa? So it's a combination of a lot of things to, you know, eventually ending up getting a job. So that's what I would like to say to these questions. And of course, the part-time work helps. And I think there's a question specifically for SMU. SMU does allow part-time work for 16 hours a week, which is actually good enough. And another point, you get paid enough. I was able to take care of my rent, my food, everything. So my parents were just supporting me on the tuition fee. That's the kind of, you know, value of work Singapore gives to students. The stipend that you get can help you take care of your all your expenses living here. But not the tuition, of course, but yeah, the rest of it, which is also a good relief actually. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Shresh, you already addressed this a little bit earlier when you said that, you know, you would probably tell people that the UK experience is great if you're planning to kind of get the experience and see a future in India or somewhere else. But really, can you also talk about how does, if someone were thinking exactly as you are thinking of like taking the degree and coming back to India and working, how is this going to pay off for people like you in the more distant future?
So the main thing, when I went there, I was in my 5th year of my IBM program. So that counts like I have done my BBA and MBA. So at the age of 21, I was able to complete MBA. So that perspective was far too different for like foreigners. Like they were thinking, oh, at this age you have completed this much. How much knowledge you have? So they always looked me as a like on an upper hand. So that really helped me in like, okay, I have to maintain that standard. I have to see that, okay, I have certain status or certain image in their mind. So I can't, I can't do that. So after that, like when I was completing my MSc, and then also after that, I had 2 masters at the age of 22, at the age of 23, basically. So that was the best part. And when I came back to India, I joined my family business. So that time I was like, everyone was like, at this age you have completed 2 masters and undergraduate. So that was like, it was feeling good that, oh yes, I have done something. That means. And the perspective you have talked about employment prospects, and there we had, like earlier Palak has mentioned, we have job fairs in our university. We in UK also, in Nottingham Trent University also, we had many job fairs. Almost every month we had job fair of different companies. We had almost every MNCs we had in our campus. But just they have only 2 people on campus, and they just tell you how to apply. And that you can also apply through their guidance, through website only, or you can apply directly through website. Like basically, if you are interacting with them, you get a different confidence of applying it. And if you are applying directly on just sitting on a table and you are applying on a website, that's different on while applying to the employment teams. And for the long run, as prospect, basically, if you are going for a family business or for like jobs, so the best benefit is in the 5 years you are able to get 2 masters and 1 undergrad degree. So after when you are looking for job X, then if you are applying to as a fresher, then still you have another additional point to if the employer will choose you, or other than the candidate is capable or not. So that's a different thing. But yeah, in UK also there's many points, many things when employer doesn't think about that what the candidate is. In UK it has happened that master's student hasn't got the job and undergrad student has that job. So it definitely depends on the candidate also. I had my friends, like they both went into the same interview. They both cleared the first round. They both cleared the second round, and face-to-face interview, one-on-one interview. They went to I think Birmingham. So there they both went there, and one of the undergrad student got the job, and the master student who was doing MSc in international business with me, and he didn't got the job. So it doesn't mean that if you had masters, then only you can get a job, or it basically, as Ruchika rightly said, it basically depends on the candidate. Everything is easy, everything is difficult. It depends how you take it.
Very well said, Shresh. And I like that you mentioned that point. I mean, particularly in the UK, this is an experience that I also had many years ago. There are a lot of elements at play. Let's be very honest. First thing is that sometimes the kinds of jobs that are available, especially when the market is down, which it has been now at least since 2008, they are jobs for which if you are overqualified, then you may be automatically, that might disqualify you, right? And that's actually good for you because you don't want to start in a job that you're overqualified for. That's a bad start for your career, let me tell you that, okay?
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is that there are many unconscious biases at play, right? When it comes to hiring people, there are many unconscious biases at play everywhere in the world, okay? I will not go more into the technical, sociological, historical, political, colonial aspects of all of this. We'll save that maybe for another webinar. However, if you get what I'm trying to say, these things are extremely common, okay? And we are not saying this because we are above that we don't do that. We also have unconscious biases through which we judge people. But let's also understand that the same is true for everybody, everywhere in the world, okay? Yes, and let me come now to you, Palak, and what would you say in terms of the short-term and the long-term implications?
So there's been so much conversation. Okay, so I'm going to start with talking about whether or not you want to settle in the country has a huge impact on your decision, obviously. I'm going to talk specifically about the US. Most of the people who apply to the US in the first case is because they want to go and settle over there. I, for one, initially going back to the first question, was inclined towards JGBS only because I was getting to eventually live that American dream, and just kind of going and settling over there. And as and when I kind of developed my taste for marketing, also because US is the biggest market for this particular field, I was extremely inclined towards going to the US at that time. And like I already mentioned before, job opportunities are they're very open to job opportunities in the US. They are welcoming you. They want you to work. internship opportunities for students are immense. Like there is no boundaries on that. Obviously, you have to do the hard work. You have to put in all that effort. Now, like Ruchika mentioned, that they have a personal, like a professional development course. It's actually for every master's degree, undergrad degree, no matter what it is. At least in my university, I saw that they have a prerequisite course which is called professional development, where they help improve your CV, help improve your LinkedIn profile. They ask you to participate in networking events. They ask you to, there's a couple of criteria you need to qualify on. You have to sign up for the alumni portal for their university and connect with 2 or 3 alumni and kind of understand their journey in the similar field that you're looking for. So all of these things kind of, they're just getting you introduced into the format that you should be following for the rest of your life. Because I mean, it actually made me realize the importance of networking and attending these events, and whether it's social gatherings, whether it's informally meeting someone. Like we've already heard that it really worked out for Ruchika as well. So I mean, these kind of things, like I've heard so many stories about networking events actually leading to someone's dream job also. So these kind of things which we weren't open to over here, which we haven't explored in JGPS and in our undergrad in school, we actually got that opportunity to kind of just go through that process and understand the importance of it and all of that. So if you're if you're extremely passionate about something, I really believe that you can achieve it. And although it depends a lot about the job market over there, obviously now in the US there was a huge issue because of COVID. Like there was a complete strike on the hiring, and especially in the field of marketing, there was a huge struggle. Now it also went down to the time where they were only hiring for tech jobs, and they were like a clear no for any kind of business opportunities, specifically for international students. I mean, I would say it was just an unlucky time to graduate for most of us. But at the same time, things are getting better now. And leadership in the country definitely matters. I'm not going to take names, obviously, but I mean, it has created a huge impact. In the past 2 years, the amount of difference that I have myself experienced, I can actually say for sure that the leadership does matter. The kind of political influence that the country has does matter. And it, like Shesh has already mentioned, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. It doesn't come easy, but it's not impossible. And it's something that if you are stuck on, just be a little smart about your research, do the right things, kind of understand which path you're following and what is the success strategy for that path. Because if you're just blindly going with the flow, that's not going to lead you anywhere. You need to have some kind of strategy in place. You need to know what you want to achieve, whether it's short term or long term, and you need to follow some kind of strategy. Because at the end of the day, you're not in your own country, and like you have already mentioned, it does create, even if it's an unfair bias, it is a bias. And it's just there because obviously any country anywhere in the world would want to prioritize their own people over immigrants, right? So we do have an disadvantage in that field, but at the same time, we have the qualifications, we have the knowledge, the education to overpower those disadvantages, and we can take advantage of it. So I would only say that just know what you want to do, and talk to a lot of people. Talking definitely helps. Talk to mentors, talk to people who have recently experienced the same path, who have actually gone down the same thing, whether it's your seniors, whether it's your peers, whether it's professionals in the industry already. Just talk to people. And one very important thing I want to mention is Americans are very open people. Like they would really enjoy helping you. They would really want to step out of their way to help you. They're always willing to take that chance and talk to you. Like even though they won't like really let you into their personal space and all of that, but when it comes to any kind of professional help, they are always a helping hand in that case. They're always willing to do that for you. So don't be afraid or underconfident about reaching out to someone, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on an email, whether, I mean, obviously don't expect a response back from 100% people if you're talking like reaching out to 100. But at the same time, don't be afraid to reach out to people, because there are a lot of people who are willing to help you and willing to guide you through that process as well. So yeah, and coming back to the point where choosing to do a master's degree or choosing to sit for placements, I think that's a very personal choice. Nobody else can decide that for you. But I would say one thing is that doing a master's degree or getting any kind of exposure abroad, whether it is a semester abroad or a master's degree abroad or any kind of exposure that you get, even if it's like a small exchange over the summer, those kind of things also really create a huge impact on your personal development and your professional development, only because there's so much of a cultural difference. And when you interact with people outside of your circle or outside of your culture, you actually learn so many new things about people. Like, it just gives you a great amount of exposure, which in your growing ages is very, very important. No matter what stage of life you are in, I feel like that's something that's very important.
Fantastic. All right, I guess we have covered a lot of ground today. Thank you, Palak, Ruchika, and Suresh, so much for sparing your valuable time and sharing your amazing and helpful and thoughtful reflections on your experiences. I'm sure the future cohorts of JGBS will learn a lot and gain a lot from your experiences. And also thank you to the attendees who are here today for being here and also participating so actively. Look forward to catching up in person soon. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Have a lovely
I
afternoon.
wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
If anybody has questions with respect to just specific SMU in particular, you should reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm, I think, the most active there because it's on my desktop. So I can reply to your queries. It will be, I think, easier than answering here.
Yeah, great. Thanks
Yeah,
for adding that.
That was one thing I wanted to add as well. Whether it's to go to the US or not to go to the US, the pros and cons, the application process, the visa process, the stay process, anything you have any questions related to the US, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can obviously, I mean, I think that is the best platform to reach out. You can reach out to me on email as well. I mean, yeah, just feel free to talk to us. We're definitely, I mean, considering we've gone through the entire process, I think we can definitely help you out, and we'd love to help you out.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you guys. That's lovely. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ananya.